and the financial impact that this is having, or the sanctions are having.
Yeah, we're going to be looking specifically at the US sanctions for the moment because they are zeroing in a little more closely on Russia's economy. Those sanctions targeting about 20 high-powered figures within Vladimir Putin's circle, including a lot of big bankers and contractors. One of the most important targets is the bank Rossiya, which is a lender that does business with several of Putin's allies and which holds around $10 billion in assets. A senior U.S. official saying it will now no longer be able to do business in dollars. In the wake of those sanctions, Visa and MasterCard have, without notice, stopped providing services for payment transactions for clients of Bank Rossiya. There's been a more symbolic U.S. sanction against Gunvor, which is the world's fourth largest oil trading company. Putin himself is thought to have a vested interest in that firm and profits from it. Among those 20 blacklisted names is Gennady Timchenko, who himself was, until recently, a co-owner of Gunvor. Just before he was hit with sanctions earlier this week, he sold his 45% stake, presumably to limit his exposure. Now, despite all this, we've heard from Russia's deputy finance minister. He says he sees no severe consequences for the financial sector as a result of these sanctions. But we have already seen action from the ratings agency Fitch, downgrading Russia's outlook from stable to negative. So obviously a bit of an impact there.
What kind of impact is this having on the markets, Kate?
Well, we've seen Moscow's MICEX index being hit immediately. It opened 1.7% in the red as trading began this Friday. As you can see there, now plunging down nearly 3% as trading continues. So obviously being hit very hard by the economic sanctions that continue to come in to Moscow there. We're seeing a completely different story on the Asian markets. The Nikkei's closed this Friday as Japan marks the first day of spring with a long weekend. Asian stocks otherwise following in Wall Street's positive trend this Friday. The Shanghai Composite doing particularly well, up over 2.5% there.
Well, at that EU summit in Brussels, that's what we've been discussing. EU leaders also took action towards a banking union and fighting tax evasion.
Yeah, EU policymakers agreed to a €55 billion rescue fund to help wind up failing banks. That brings it a step closer to creating a European banking union. That's meant, of course, to prevent another debt crisis and bank bailouts that are funded by taxpayers. Policymakers also agreed to crack down on tax evasion, an agreement that the EU president hailed, saying banking secrecy is set to die. Delano de Souza has the details.
After 6 years of negotiations, European Union nations have come one step closer to ending banking secrecy. This after Luxembourg dropped its reservations on rendering its banking culture more transparent.
Tonight we made a breakthrough in the fight against tax fraud and tax evasion. More than ever, we will play a strong hand internationally to close down loopholes, to promote automatic information exchange, to bring in transparency. Banking secrecy is set to die.
Jumping on board with the rest of Europe is a dramatic shift for Luxembourg. The country relies on its banking and financial industry, which has over €3 trillion in assets. It had long resisted change and hoped non-EU banking nations like Switzerland and Liechtenstein would also sign up to the EU's fight against tax evasion.
We are bringing an end to banking secrecy in Europe, and we will now be in a strong position to negotiate with key international financial centres.
The legislation proposes an EU-wide automatic exchange of data on bank deposits. This would allow governments to identify and prosecute tax evaders with foreign accounts.
Well, now let's turn to some of the other day's business news, starting with a report on the health of America's banks.
Yeah, all but one of America's 30 largest banks were given a passing grade by the Federal Reserve following a series of stress tests. Only Zions Bancorp was deemed unfit to weather another severe recession. The Fed saying banks were in better shape than at any time since the financial crisis struck 5 years ago. The impending World Cup has given a boost to Nike. The athletic brand said that orders set to be delivered between March and July rose 12% to nearly $11 billion. While sales weakened in emerging market China, they jumped 33% in Western Europe, where the football tournament is especially popular. And the chief executive of General Motors is to face questions from U.S. lawmakers about the recall of 1.6 million vehicles. Mary Barra will testify on April 1st before a House of Representatives panel that's been investigating an ignition problem in some GM cars. That problem has been linked to 12 fatalities.
All right, Kate, thank you very much for that business update. Now it's time for a look at the web news.